Hey there everyone. Welcome to another Toolbox Tech Talk. Yeah, well, it's Sunday. It's 2 p.m. here in Melbourne, and it's time for another Toolbox Tech Talk with an amazing guest today. I'm really excited. I'll introduce them in a minute, but, let me just get my shades off so I can see where I'm up to here. Welcome everyone. And look, I like to always start with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the place where I live here. It's the Wurundjeri people in the Yarra Valley. I'm from New Zealand, actually, and I acknowledge my people, my iwi in New Zealand, and that's the Whanganui Tara, which is Wellington District, if you know the area. So, with no further ado, my guest today needs no introduction, really, Nigel Morris. Now, we're not cuzzy bros, but we probably got some link at about 2,000 generations back. So, welcome, Nigel.
G'day, cuz. No, we're not. We can't be. Actually, I only found out a little while ago. My last name's Morris, just like yours. But actually, we stole it because one of my ancestors jumped ship and changed his name to Morris because he didn't want to get caught. So I'm not even a Morris. So there you go.
That's pretty fascinating. Wow, didn't know that little factoid about you.
Yeah. Dad was chasing the family tree down, and it just came to this dead stop. So it took him a while, but. Eventually, they latched onto the fact that he met a girl and ran off.
Oh, an elope.
Yeah.
So you're in New South Wales and I'm in Victoria, and we're both in lockdown these days. How's it going for you?
Oh, yeah, look, I was on a webinar the other day, actually, and I think there's a state that I saw described between joyousness and depression, and in the middle is languishing. And I think that's where so many of us are, right? I've got no reason to complain. I feel a bit guilty sometimes about how fortunate I am. I've got lots of space around me. I'm on the northern beaches. I can go for walks. We've got very low case counts, and I'm very comfortable working from home. So I feel very, very fortunate compared to many people out there. Having said that, it's not much fun. And I miss my friends. I miss the dynamic of everything. But so personally, it's like everyone. It's a little bit tedious and a little bit tough. But I got no reason to complain. Frankly, really the subject here today is solar, and we're watching the solar industry really. I think I described it the other day on the latest episode of Solar Insiders that it's at the bottom of a dip in the solar coaster. Warwick's figures kind of play that out, so it's pretty bumpy ride out there. Yeah,
I really feel for all those installers who just basically can't go on site. They've got jobs to do. There's demand, but they can't fulfill those orders.
And anyone up on I was chatting to some guys just on the edge of the border, actually, with New South Wales and Queensland, and when they got hit with the lockdown, 60 or 70% of their staff were on the other side of the border, and they thought, oh, okay, we got no staff here, and it happened pretty quickly, and so they literally packed up a van with everyone's computers and printers and office chairs and everything else, drove to the border, and literally handed them over the fence to their employees and said, here you go, take this home, go and work from home. But so, they could get their staff working again, but of course, trying to get jobs done, trying to get stock, trying to get trucks across all that kind of stuff's just nightmarish. So it's, everyone's mentally worn down and spending an enormous amount of time just managing all these crazy logistics, right?
Hey, I just want to reach out to the audience that's flowing in at the moment to let you know that you're welcome to ask questions of Nigel or myself, and just put them into the comments or the chat window, depending on what platform you're on, and I can bring them up on screen and we can talk about them. So I've already got one. So Jake's just saying it's not even a question, but it's nice to have a shout out there. Thanks, Jake. Happy Sunday, man.
Jake, how are you?
Yeah, it's cool having a live audience. So look, I guess most people in the industry know who you are, but for those who don't, I mean, the backstory is so long with you. How did you get started in solar?
So I've got to try and keep this short, sharp and sweet, right? But essentially, a buddy of mine was moving to the north coast of New South Wales back in 91. And my family comes from up there. My mum was born. In fact, my granddad is from that area, from Bangalore, Byron Bay, Mullumbimby area. So I knew that area really, really well. Buddy of mine was moving up there. We were having a farewell party. We were late at night, flicked the telly on and saw a show on TV about these hippies in Nimbin who'd built this solar powered factory. And we kind of joked, and he joked at me and said, "There you go, mate. You know, Charlotte, my daughter was only tiny at the time." And he said, you could move up too. And, you know, I'll just be up the road. You can go and do that. And we kind of joked about it. And the next day I literally sat down and wrote a letter and sent him a letter and said, "Look, I don't know why I'm applying for a job with you. I work in the automotive industry and in quality assurance, and I was a fitter and turner, and, you know, I don't know anything about solar, but it seems like a good thing to be doing. So, you know, have you got any jobs?" And they rang me the next day and went, "When do you want to start?" And
Wow.
yeah, and one thing led to another, and sure enough, within a couple of months, we'd packed up the truck and moved up there, and we found somewhere to live. And I that was where I really am really indebted to the guys and girls up at Rainbow Power Company, because in those days, you know, they were absolute pioneers in this space, and gave me a fantastic grounding in everything to do with renewables, not just solar, of course. They were doing wind. We made our own micro hydros. I lived with a micro hydro at home. So, you know, I got a baptism of fire into everything renewables. So that's where I kicked off, mate. That's it was literally a show on the ABC.
Hey, we've got some commonality there. So I installed my first solar panel in 1991. So I call that the beginning of my career. I trained with Peter Pedals at Rainbow Power Company.
Yeah, we used to do training courses up there.
That's right. It's up there upstairs in that little hot room.
Yeah.
So I did my accreditation course before it became a RTO or TAFE only. So it was still being run by entities, and I was super impressed by the ethos. I suppose it's not just the tech; it's the fact that everything about what Rainbow did was about environmental, sustainability, minimising waste. Everything down to the circuit boards. When there'd be leftover copper sulfate solution, they put it in the jar and put it into the building walls. The wall was made of some of their waste material.
Yep. Yeah, they absolutely, everyone there absolutely tried to find a way to have total ecological sustainability across everything that we did. No one's perfect, of course, but really, really good crack at it. And that building that they built was just the most beautiful building to work in, all solar passive design, and lots of fresh air. In fact, every time I get up that neck of the woods, I try and drop in and say good day, and it's always just a pleasure just being in that building.
Except for the noisy inverter in the front room. Was it a Xantrak or something? Yeah.
The Trace.
Oh, the Trace.
Yeah, that's right. But that was the first 3-phase grid connected solar system in the country.
Wow.
Had never been done before. In fact, I remember we applied to get approval to export the energy to North Power back then, and it took us months to even get a response out of them, because they just thought, what are those idiots on about today? And eventually, I think they said they'd give us 2 cents a kilowatt hour for our excess, and we arged and barged and went, well, okay, that'll do. So yeah, we connected up. It was the first 3-phase system in the country, and battery system connected up from the day we started up, and had wind power from two wind turbines for a while, and
until it fell over.
Until one of them fell over. True. There were some lessons there, and the blades flew off. We found them about a K away, embedded in a paddock. So a lot of lessons learned, a lot of great trial and error up there. But we had a steam generator out the back, which we could generate energy with. We had a vast array of all sorts of different solar panels on the roof as well. So yeah, all sorts of stuff going on. It was great.
So I nearly bought that steam engine off Rainbow.
Oh, really?
But I ended up getting another one directly from the manufacturer. So I got a new one from Strath Steam.
Yes.
Yep.
Nice.
I just sold it actually. So it never got used. Like my plan was, not to have a diesel generator, but to have steam as my backup, because we got ample wood here. Yep. But because of changes in living arrangements, we never had anywhere to put it, and it just sat in the shed for years. And then solar got so cheap, we didn't need diesel much, basically, so I didn't need this backup.
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea, and we were into them because we were doing quite a lot, as the guys and girls up there still do. They do a lot in the South Pacific. So the idea was always to try and use excess biomass, particularly coconut husks and stuff like that. I was lucky enough to travel to Indonesia way back in the day to try and see if we could get a project up using coconut husks as a fuel stock. But of course, one of the things, and I never ran the boiler, and we had a couple of really talented people who ran the boiler, but firing that thing up was quite a process. And bringing up the pressure and making sure that everything was right, and then firing off the steam engine and getting the actual engine to run off it, and when the thing was running and steam was going, and you don't overheat it or you'll blow the boiler to pieces. And it made great pizzas, but it was quite a piece of equipment. It always made me a bit nervous.
You probably didn't need the heat either in them, but would have been a negative. But here it's cold, so that was a big plus. Was hydronic heating was part of the plan.
Yeah. If you can use all those different forms of energy, electricity and heat and steam for process as well, then then it becomes super cost effective.
I mean, I guess for me, the story of solar has been it's become so abundantly affordable that I've just moved away from all the other sources. So we've got wind, micro hydro, didn't actually get around to having steam, wood-fired boilers, and gas, and all of that's just gone to electricity. Electricity is the future, really.
It is. It's amazing, isn't it? And all around us. I mean, I can remember we used to really encourage people to go to gas because it was so economical and it was very clean compared to buying dirty coal-fired energy. And there was a common statement that we used to talk about all the time. But you're right, and now you wouldn't think twice about it. And it's funny. We'll come to all things electric, but putting an electric vehicle in the garage and watching my bill and watching my consumption go up and go, oh, hang on, my consumption's going up. And then we could do some quick numbers and go, but hang on, that's still cheaper and it's way cleaner. So it does make sense. But go electric.
Hey, while we're talking about olden times, so I remember working on a Pelton wheel turbine that Rainbow also made. That was pretty cool.
Indeed. Yeah. We manufactured them. In fact, we were very lucky, got a big government grant that paid for the training facility that you went to out of CEDA, Sustainable Energy Development Authority, I think, run by Kathleen Zoy. Yeah, we got a grant to do a whole lot of things in the factory, and actually buying a TIG welding machine so that we could move from the earlier type of body that we used to a full aluminium box section housing was one of the things that we did, and we upgraded our casting facilities, and we used to actually use a silicon mold to cast those resin Pelton wheels ourselves, and then a 3-phase induction motor on the back. Carly McLaughlin was a genius with energy right back in those days, and it worked out a great way to do clever things with 3-phase induction motors and convert it to DC and charge a battery just like you're doing, right?
Yeah. Look, the one where I was working on, I didn't install it, I was just maintaining it. The main complaint from the customer was we've got too much power. The batteries are always full. We just don't know what to do with it all. We've got a heater running, in the shed just to dump the load. It's a nice problem to have, isn't it? Too much power.
Great problem to have. The hydros are beautiful. I actually had one of the prototypes at my place for a while, and we had a little spring up on the hill, and 400 meters of it wasn't even 1 inch. I think it was 3/4 inch poly.
You could cut steel with that.
Oh, mate, the pressure that came out. And I had the prototype unit, which was literally a Pelton wheel made out of spoons soldered together around a disc, housed inside an old plastic bucket as the housing, with a bit of perspex over the front, and an old 3-phase induction motor that Carly probably salvaged from the tip. And made work, and we shared that power between 3 homes, and it was just that constant, didn't have to be much, just a couple of amps here, but it was coming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what was going on, and particularly through the wet season or through your winter. Up there it was through the wet season. Just magnificent source of power if you can do it.
Was that the advanced double spoon system with 2 spoons?
No, this was the single spoon. This was before we went to the double. The double was an advancement.
I actually found one of those. I was installing a hydro turbine in a shed for a client, and I looked up above me, and there was an old bicycle wheel with spoons on it. That was their first effort. They must have seen what you'd done and made their own.
I mean, that was what was great about those guys is they just had a crack, right?
Yeah.
It was people in sheds, or didn't matter where they were, but they were having a crack, and there was some absolute geniuses up there that I was very blessed to learn a couple of tricks from.
It is the most, what would you say, low-tech sustainable energy is hydro. Like you don't need any special skills other than just construction and an old motor, an alternator or something. Can, like you say, some spoons and a wheel, and away you go.
Yeah. 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 It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And you don't even need a hell of a lot of water. And in fact, if you manage your water well, one of the most famous systems up there, which was actually a bunch of staff who lived on a property out of town, spring at the top that fed a huge tank. That tank then fed a hydro, which fed power to 4 houses. And then it overflowed into a dam, and that dam ran down the hill to another hydro and another dam and another tank and another 4 houses. And then the spillover from that did the same thing. And they used the same water 4 or 5 times down this hill, feeding dams for fire. They had fire safety gear that was all hydrants and everything all hooked up, and feeding power to all those homes, and putting it back into the creek at appropriate times as well. So looking after the ecosystem as well. And the concept of using that water 4 times over and over and over and over again to make power, and it's glorious stuff if you can do it.
Yeah, you're just harvesting gravity. That's essentially.
Exactly.
So that was Rainbow Power. That was the 90s.
Yeah.
What happened next?
What happened next, I guess, was, a bunch of things happened in my personal life. So my partner and I split up, and she headed back to South Australia with my daughter. And I went to a conference in Sydney for Rainbow, and read a book on the way. One of those books that you read when you're kind of going, oh, how am I going to do this? And I don't get paid very much. And, I'd really like to see my daughter more. And I read this book, and it was full of inspirational things. And it had a few good tips in there about asking leading questions. And I was at this conference in Sydney, bumped into the late Richard Collins, who was at that conference, and he said, oh, how's it going? And we got chatting, and anyway, a couple of these questions popped into my head, and I said, oh, you must surely be looking for someone like me who's experienced in the solar industry. And he said, funny you should say that, we are. So anyway, one thing led to another, and he offered me a job. That really worked well for me because I could move to Sydney, which had made it easier for me to keep in touch with my daughter. And I really wanted to learn more about what was going on in the solar industry, and I wanted to work for a manufacturer of PV panels. BP were the world's largest at that point in time, so it was a real honor and a privilege for me to get a gig with them, and was with them for nearly 12 years. Spent many years learning the ropes and doing all sorts of interesting things with them. Wonderful experience. And of course, there was actually an article in the ABC News today about the history of manufacturing in Australia, and why it has taken off and hasn't taken off in various different ways. So yeah,
BP Solar was a great incubator. Look where people who've left BP Solar have gone, like yourselves, and you keep bumping into them in the industry. They cut their teeth in BP Solar, and they ended up everywhere.
All over the world. The world. Yeah, it's true.
And also, Sydney was the epicenter of R&D for solar too. So, the global leader in R&D for solar.
That's right. We had super close links to the UNSW and ongoing partnerships with UNSW that went on for many years. And we were a kind of a factory down the road where they could come up with a concept and give us a call and go, would you test this for us? And so we could literally try and prove out some of their R&D for them in a production setting. So we did everything we could to leverage the great tech that came out of that place, and in fact did in many ways. The things that are standard in solar construction today were things that we piloted in that plant, and of course we merged during those years. We BP owned BP Solar, and Amoco owned SolarX, and SolarX had a factory in Sydney as well. And in about 99-ish, Amoco and BP Solar merged those businesses together, and we shut down both our plants and built the new one in Homebush, or Sydney Olympic Park. So, yeah, over the years we got to play with so much great technology out there. It was wonderful.
Cool. Yeah, so at BP Solar, you started to get into the commercial space a lot more. I remember you talking about designing, inverter rooms. You had to consider the thermal load of the inverters, and I'd never really thought about that before. The fact that if you put 20 inverters in a room, it's a lot of heat.
I was, again, I'm going to give a lot of credit where it's due to all the people I worked with. I was predominantly in sales and managing the distribution network and a lot of marketing, but worked very, very closely with the product development team globally, in fact. The great part about that was that, we had a massive division looking after telecommunications. In the early days, we did navigational aids and did a lot of work in signaling and stuff like that. Of course, we worked with Telstra in the telecommunications space for decades and decades and decades. We had an international development arm that did all the amazing big projects over in the Philippines and Malaysia and other great places, which were big, WHO and UNESCO sort of type projects, plus anything large and commercial. Well, there wasn't much of it back then, but anything large and commercial, we were going after it. We're right on the cutting edge of that shift from being entirely an off-grid market to it becoming on-grid, and in fact had a number of patents for products there. We had one of the first mounting rail systems, which we actually patented, because there wasn't an aluminium rail that you could buy off the shelf that you could bolt solar panels to in the way everyone does today. So we actually patented one there, and we were the first people to ever do an STC trading product. I remember the guys telling me about it and trying to convince me to build a product up out of it and sell it. And what is this garbage? And we're going to trade certificates? How's that ever going to work? And there was no value in it to begin with. But of course, over the years, it's turned into the STC market that we have today. So
yeah, BP had that special cashback thing, and hardly anyone took advantage of it. It was really quite generous.
Enviro cashback.
Yeah.
Enviro cashback. It was basically the first STC trading scheme. Yeah.
I remember that. So then BP sort of pulled up stumps, decided the future was fossil fuels, and kicked everyone out. And I remember you turning up at a conference with a new suit on. You said, "My redundancy payment."
Yeah, look, like all big corporations, you go through restructuring, and eventually you get a little bit tired of that restructuring. And when an opportunity to leave and go out on your own and do something different happens, then there comes a point where you take that leap. I've lost my vision here. Am I still coming through to you, mate? Is it just my camera?
I can hear you perfectly. You're just frozen. It does look like your signal strength's dropped off, but don't worry, it'll come back. So
okay,
I can hear you perfectly clear, and you still look like Nigel. So that's a good mark.
Okay, good. The time was due, and 12 years was a long stint there. So I actually jumped out and formed my own company, and at that time there was very limited access to data. If you wanted to, understand what the market was likely to do, excuse me, what the market was likely to do, or how. See, I know what the problem is now, Glenn. My it's dropped offline from my camera. Give me one sec.
Yeah, I can see you on the iPad in this corner view. But I'll fill in while you're doing that. So just shout out to the audience. You're welcome to ask questions or just share the love and give us a thumbs up and say hi while we chat about anything and everything under the solar sun. But Nigel's just sorting out his little tech hiccup in the background there. I should mention a couple of things which I usually mention at the end of the show, that I'll be running a battery standards crash course, ASNZS 5139, in a few weeks' time on the 29th and 30th September. So anyone who's kind of keen to join in on that, the details are available in the little link at the bottom here. So you can just go to solarquip.com and sign up for that course. It looks like Nigel's still fiddling around. He's coming back in a minute. Other things, just alert everyone to the fact that on the 18th of December 2021, you don't want to be holding old stock of inverters that aren't on the approved list. There's going to be a huge clean out of the approved list from the CEC because of a change in standards. So 4777 Part 2, the old version expires on the 18th of December. The new version, 2020 version, comes in on that date, and suddenly everything else is not sellable or installable anyway. Nigel, you're back.
Yeah, sorry, plan B. Luckily, I had a plan B.
That's all right. These things happen. That's what live shows are all about.
Yeah.
I've had my 7-year-old pop up behind me without me noticing it, and he's sort of like his head's over around the back of me, trying to get my attention without saying anything.
I like the complete lack of professionality in our world nowadays, and the fact that all our kids and dogs and birds, and it's very real. I like it.
It is. I think COVID's done it to suddenly everyone has to just be a pro from their laptop at home because they can't go to the studio.
Yeah.
And so we accept low tech but quality content.
That's it. And it's legit, right? It's very real. So it's good. So I apologise, viewers.
Yeah, no worries. So we got up to the move to your own business, Solar Business Services.
Yeah. So, I mean, in a nutshell, one of the things that I'd learnt over the years was that there was no one out there who could provide data to help businesses to, try and predict where the market might go. There was no one specialising in coaching and trying to help those businesses to develop strategies and tactics and various other things. And so I set a business up to try and do that. Had a great time doing it. Spent a lot of time blogging and built up a huge database of readers. Started writing stuff for Giles back then, and doing a lot of industry advocacy stuff. And the goal, as much as trying to make an honest living and have a crack at running my own business, was also to try and give a little bit back to the business, to the industry. I'd been very fortunate to have the support and help of a lot of people over the years. So 6 or 7 years doing that, which was wonderful. And then I'd worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies, large and small. And one of my clients said to me, "Nigel, you're a nice consultant, but you're pretty exy. How about we give you a job as a CEO of one of our businesses that we're trying to sort out?" And that company was Sungevity, and they had a business unit here in Australia that was kind of stumbling a little bit, and I had a crack at it for a couple of years to try and see if we could resurrect it. Unfortunately, it was too late. So I learned what it was like to have to close a business down, which was a horrible experience, but we managed to do it as well as you possibly can and as reasonably as you can. Resulted in me getting some good hands-on experience right at the end, where I had to literally get on the roof and do the last few installs with my crew because our staff had all gone. So very humbling experience, and and that came to an end after a couple of years. And I thought, oh, what do I do now? I'll have to go and get a job. Who would I like to work for? And it's funny how the world goes full circle, because one of the biggest lessons I got, Glenn, from my days at Rainbow, right in the early days, was people coming in going, "Oh, my solar system's not working. You've sold me a dud, or these batteries are no good, and it must be your fault." And of course, we had zero data. The only thing that you could refer to try and understand, had they flogged the system, were they using too much energy, or indeed had the batteries actually failed prematurely, the only thing we had was a voltmeter. And maybe some manual records. There wasn't any gear around in those days to collect data and really understand the performance of a solar system. And so over my 30 odd years, when on many occasions solar analytics had popped up into my life, including when I was running that retail business, we used solar analytics for a whole bunch of reasons as a solution to help customers in a way that we weren't able to in the early days. And so the opportunity to work with solar analytics was a dream come true. I was very lucky. They happened to need a cranky old guy to sit in the corner and do some stuff. So one thing led to another. But and it was also, out of all the parts in solar, all the different areas within the solar industry that you could work in, software was not an area that I'd really played around with. So learning about what it takes to actually build great software was something I hadn't done and I really wanted to learn about.
Hey, we just had a comment here from probably the most positive, upbeat person in the solar industry,
Bless her.
who you also
My
work
old
with,
friend.
or you were working with.
Well, we are still working
Are you
together. We
still
work
working
very
together? Yep.
yeah, Kathleen's been with us at Solar Analytics for 4 years, and we worked at BP Solar together for many years. And she helped me at SBS as well when I was running that business. So yeah, Kathleen and I go way back. She is the most infectiously enthusiastic and passionate person to work with. She's a treasure.
Yep,
You should be
absolutely.
looking after Jeff, though, Kathleen. I don't know why you're here listening to me bang on again.
Well, thanks, Kathleen. It really always great to see you at any show. You just light up a room when you walk in the place. So we're up to solar analytics now, and we did flag this in the promo that you're going to talk a bit about, what is. You've just introduced analytics full stop, which is you need it to understand if something's not working or how well it's working. I was just thinking while you're saying that, imagine if we had cars that had no fuel gauge, petrol gauge, temperature gauge, speedo or odometer. They'd still work. You could still drive the car, but you're driving blind and you could wreck it or you just, would never know when to service it.
That's it. That's exactly right. Yeah, dashboards are essential to any system, any ecosystem. Really, you need to have some kind of visibility over the core functions of what's going on. And as wonderful and simplistic as solar is, everyone out there listening today has heard a story about someone who thought their solar system was working, but it turns out it actually wasn't, or they thought it was doing what it should be, but it turns out that it was only delivering 40 or 50% of the energy that it was supposed to. And this has been the big challenge. And this is actually the foundation of solar analytics, because where they came from was the development of algorithms that were able to use algorithms and fuzzy logic and machine learning and all the great software tools that are available to us today to actually automatically work out whether a system is doing not just producing power, but is it producing the power that it's supposed to be producing. And that's the foundation of everything that we started out doing. And of course, the hardware that we use has evolved over the years. It's changed over and over and over again. We're renowned for our 3G, 4G hardware because it just makes connection ubiquitous and reliable and way simpler than trying to maintain Wi-Fi connections. But of course, it comes at a price, and so we have also worked hard on not only driving the cost of that technology down, but also in the last 9 months or so have released two of the first two of many, we hope, inverter integration solutions where we can not only pull data from our own hardware, but we can now pull it from other people's hardware as well and give you the same solar analytics dashboard experience, the same algorithms, the same automation, but we can now pull it direct out of SunGrow inverters and direct out of Fronius inverters, and several more to come.
I remember when I first came across Solarlytics and I thought to myself, well, inverters have CTs and they can measure, and what's it really giving me more than that? And then I think you posted it when you were with Solar Business Services. You said you had one installed in your home and you got a little email saying, we think you might have a problem with a tree growing up on the eastern side of your house. And so that was from analytics, it worked that out.
That's right. That's a true story. I'm a typical solar owner, lazy. It's like a mechanic's car, right? It's never looked after properly. It's the last thing on your list of things to do. And literally, they predicted that there was a problem that was mostly to the east of my array. And I was reading this, and I was working from home, so I could literally look out the window and went, "Oh my God, my tree's growing. Look at that, my tree's growing." And I actually rang Stefan that day very, very excitedly and said, "Mate, you are onto something, because you just solved a problem." You just completely solved the problem for me, and I didn't even know I had that problem. And whether it's me being a lazy solar owner, or whether it's my mum, bless her, who loves solar and has had solar for years and years and years, but she's not highly technical. She needs someone to help to work these problems out. And of course, with millions of homeowners out there now, there are some who are more sophisticated and want rich data experiences and all sorts of sophisticated stuff. But a lot of people out there just go, you know what? I just want you to make sure it's going okay. I want you to do that accurately, because yes, sure, I can get cheap Wi-Fi monitoring with my inverter, but it may or may not be accurate, may or may not give you the whole story. There's no point monitoring your solar if you're not monitoring your consumption as well. I don't know why anyone would do one and not the other, because your self-consumption is where the whole business is at. And so, moving in, you can just go deeper and deeper and deeper when you get into that level of sophistication.
Hey, you're getting some love in the comments here. So Kane just popped up there. Solarlytics is one of my
Kane.
favourite products. Massive advocate here at Kohler Solar.
Oh, yeah, they love us down there. Good on you, Kane.
And we've got
Manny's there too. Manny, hey, Manny.
What a legend. Okay. So yeah, you're getting some love there. So let's go back to Solarlytics and look. You've got a new feature come out. So it's Solarlytics dashboard and Solarlytics Live, and you're going to show us some of that now.
Yeah, I will. I'll try and keep it nice and short, sharp, and sweet. But
shall I bring it up on screen? So
that'd be awesome if you don't mind.
Yep. We go.
So yeah, I mean, like all software providers, Netflix, Facebook, anything else, we're constantly doing updates, right? That's part of the service that we deliver. You can't stand still with software. And luckily, our competitors make us work really, really hard at this. The difference between Solar Analytics and native inverter dashboard software, if you like, is this is all we do. We live, breathe and we'll live and breathe this stuff every single day, and we're surrounded by people whose sole mission is to make great dashboards. So a lot of it's in the subtlety, and there's a lot going on, so I'm not going to go through all of it. But what I will tell you is about an update, a huge update. In fact, one of the biggest updates we've ever done was just launched a week or so. So firstly, you can see our dashboard's changed a little bit, and some of the menus have been renamed, and a lot of this comes out of, again, the kind of research that you really need to be doing when you're exclusively a solar software provider is we spend a huge amount of time researching our users. We have professional researchers who survey end users and survey owners and ask them for ideas, and we spend enormous amounts of time trying to work out which ones we could or should do. And the same with our retailers, with our reseller partners. We spend endless hours getting feedback and listening to feedback and prompting for feedback. We had a poll that went out just last week asking questions about various different features. So over time, what we're always trying to do is roll those feedback, those bits of feedback and suggestions through. So a lot of the little changes are quite subtle. I won't bother going through all of them in detail, but it's all about usability. It's all about trying to make the dashboard easier to use. I'm going to take you through a quick little tour. So the first thing that's different to what is traditionally the case is that you've now got a landing screen, a home page that has both consumption and production on it. And that's one of those things that we've been wanting to do for ages. It had been a bit tricky to get there, but we finally got there not long ago because it's one of the most popular screens. People want to see that relationship between generation and production. So it's there on the screen. Our live data is there in the same way that it's always been there. In my case, I've got our classic hardware. So I've got 5-second data. You can see the grayed out block over here on the left. That's 5-second data, and you can see it's very apparent there that there's stuff going on. When you get down to that level of granularity, you can see stuff happening that you won't see when you aggregate it together into typical 5-minute views or longer. So
this is home?
That is my home, actually. Yeah.
Is a fridge circuit on there?
What is going on? It's only 383 watts. That would be the standing load in the house. Yeah, okay. That would just be the standing load. And what was going on back there? That was my son cooking me lunch. We talked about lunch.
Oh yeah,
that was the stovetop going up and down while he cooked me an egg in the hole. Bless him. So live data, and then this is quite a change. So the screen, the landing page now includes all these things we call cards, and the idea with these cards is make it really easy to shortcut firstly to some of the key information and bring a summary up to the top. So you can see here, for example, the number one people buy solar is for the savings. And so now right at the front of the page, the solar savings are right there. The cumulative total over the life of the system is right there for the customer to see. This is powerful because what this does is allows the user to feel like they've made the right decision, right? I did the right thing. I chose that. It avoids buyer remorse and it avoids nervousness that you aren't getting what you paid for. So it's designed to keep them happy. That is good business for solar retailers because a happy customer doesn't ring. They don't complain. They can see their savings growing over time. They can see that what you told them you were going to do, you're actually doing. So then what do? Then they tell their friends. And when they tell their friends don't shop around, they buy on referrals, which is the best kind of lead you can get. So bringing the savings up to the front is obviously logical and a great thing to do. You can also see a lot of other information here around my electricity bill, which I'll touch on in a second. That allows you to really, really accurately understand what's my bill likely to be. You can get some predictive stuff there and you can understand what's going on. And of course, making the bill, this My Energy Usage is one of my favorites, because what that allows you to do is actually understand the relationship between generation, consumption, and exports. And you can see that in a variety of different ways. The rest of the screens are pretty much the same, but you'll also notice up here this card called Plan Optimizer. Now,
hang on. Before we move on to Plan Optimizer, I've got a question. Yeah. So where it says My Electricity Bill, is that the customer putting in their electricity bill, or is that calculated?
That's calculated. So that's the customer can upload their tariff structure. In a few weeks, they'll actually be able to just digitally scan a bill and do a digital bill upload. That allows us to understand their tariff plan, their time of use rates, if they've got it, all the variables that would normally be there. And then we can look at the real data and actually do those calculations so that we can work out what's likely to come in a bill for them.
That's amazing. I mean, I was just thinking, how on earth can you do that? Because most customers can't even read their bill. So how would they know what their tariff is? It's so complicated that even experts have a difficulty reading their power bills. But you're going to do it through, just a direct upload and then parse the data and pull out the tariffs.
Correct. You can do it manually now. And in fact, we did a big update last year. So we have, I'm going to jump through to, I wonder if I can do this. I should do it. I'll go down here. So you can see here all the details of the energy cost. It says change your energy plan information. And so I can dive in here and I can actually see all the details of my plan here. And as you can see, I can say add new plan. I'm going to just do this on the fly. And there you go. It'll take me through a number of steps now so that I can manually add this information at any point in time. And what a lot of our installers will do is actually do this as part of the setup process. Doesn't take long, and you can actually do that when you set the system up. And of course, over time, those tariffs and plans are going to change. So you need to be able to update them from time to time. And it's one of those subtle things, but we will retain the historical data for you at the rates that energy was flowing through. So you get a true reflection of your savings and your costs as time passes. You can really easily update it. And like I said, the digital bill uploader will come out very, very shortly. That'll just make that even easier again.
Yeah, I mean, there's those cheap plans for the first year that you get on, and then you fall back onto the expensive one. You never really knew that it happens. You just think electricity prices have gone up because you haven't been keeping an eye on your plan.
So that's the perfect segue to Plan Optimizer, right? Because this is exactly the problem that we were trying to solve with Plan Optimizer. So as you all know, there are lots of plans out there, but on average, I don't know if you looked at if you ever read the State of the Market report by the AER, but the State of the Energy Market report came out only a few months back, highlights that on average, only 16% of Australians will actually switch plans on average.
So the rest are paying loyalty tax.
That's right. And you know what? I'm one of them, right? It's the mechanic's car syndrome again. I chose a good provider when I moved into this house 5 years ago, but I've been too busy, yada, 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 yada. And I know there are a myriad of plans out there, but I also know that actually unraveling which one is the best one for me is horrendous. It's a horrible exercise. I probably couldn't even build a spreadsheet that would do it accurately. And you actually need to know what time of day you're using energy to actually do those calculations.
Yeah, I mean, for our software, Solar Plus, we realise there's over 2,000 tariffs in Australia. So, all the possible combinations, it's amazing.
It's huge. It's huge. So do you want to see how we can do that calculation for you?
Show me.
There you go. I just did it.
Oh, that took like 1 second.
I just did it. So what we have done here, you can see we have come up with the recommended plan option. Here's mine, the current plan. That is this one down here. This is my current plan that I'm on now, and it's calculated what my 3-month energy cost would be.
Oh my God, look at the savings.
$373.18 per quarter.
Jeez.
Per quarter. So that's $1,200 a year. Now, this is over and above what I'm saving on my solar system already, of course. I'm already getting my savings, but I'm not getting the most savings. So, and down below, what you can see is ranked from, the best plan in terms of savings. Actually, that's changed. That's changed, which is cool. I'm going to come back to that. You can see them ranked in the savings. And look down the bottom here, 31 different plans that I'm eligible for at my place. So what we're doing, obviously, is pulling all that plan data in. We do an update every month, so the calculation is redone every single month automatically. And we then take the last 3 months of your data, both your consumption data and your solar generation data, and compare that to all those different plans in the market. And it is interesting to see this live, really, because when I did this calculation last month, Mojo, who are now number 2, they were my number 1 recommendation, right? But obviously there's been some change to the plans, right? So we've picked up on that change. It's now recommending a different plan. Now the difference is probably $5 or $10, right? But what this is showing beautifully in real time, and not embarrassing me, thank goodness, that our plans are, and it is rolling through new plans. It is finding new opportunities. It is recognizing when someone is potentially doing different things with their plan. And you know what's interesting? I'm looking at this plan. Can you see this? This plan only has a 3-cent feed-in tariff, and this one has an 8-cent feed-in tariff. But the 3-cent one is better for me, according to our software, only by $7 or $8. But this highlights all the other stuff that's obviously buried in the background around other charges and fees and various other things, which make this calculation so complicated. So, there you go. It took me a second to click the button. Tells me how much I can save per quarter. There's about $1,200 worth of savings for me. I can see the name of the provider. I can see the name of the plan. I can hop on the phone or jump on their website and do the switch and save the money. I don't know why I haven't.
I was at a public talk by Alan Pearce, and it was to an audience who were interested in how to reduce the cost of electricity. And he said, the very first thing you can do is change providers.
Yeah, that's it.
He said that's the cheapest thing you can do, and probably the biggest straight up saving in terms of payback. And you're making it a one-click wonder now. And you don't have to delve through all the different offers and try to work out what one's right for you based on your usage patterns and your generation. It's automated.
It's automated, and it's the first time, not only are we the first people to really focus on doing this for solar owners, because, of course, our bias is how do we find the best plan for a solar owner? We're the first people to really, really focus intently on that. Secondly, to actually use real solar data, of course, because we have that data from all our systems that we're analyzing. And the first ones to really, really focus on doing that hard analysis. Take the pain away from that analysis. The switching is not the hard part. Switching is quite easy. You ring a company and say, I want to change to you. They're going to make it really, really easy. The hard part is knowing who do I ring and what plan do I ask for. So that's where all our effort went into. This has actually been years of work. It's been something we've been working towards for a long time. And the idea is to find new ways to get savings for solar owners beyond just the solar. And of course, Plan Optimizer is just the first of a number of products that will roll out over the coming years that are designed to optimize the savings you can get from a solar system in a whole lot of ways.
Hang on, let's just take you an example. So you're on $833 a quarter at the moment on this standard plan.
Yep.
You've got solar. What size solar system do you have?
I got a tiny system, like 1.2 kilowatts.
Okay, so it is a tiny system. Wow. And
long story.
Yep, and of course you've got a solar analytics system installed there. Now, can you give any rough ideas on what an installation would cost?
For solar analytics?
Mm.
So you can add solar analytics to a solar system these days from about $165 retail using our inverter integrated solution. If you're already putting a SunGrow or Fronius inverter in, you already put a consumption meter in, you're already connecting it up to the net, $165 retail for a 5-year plan to add solar analytics.
Wow. And so your estimated savings are around nearly $400 a quarter.
Yeah.
That's a pretty quick payback.
Yeah. Isn't it? It's a
Yep.
no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Let alone the fact, and we're talking here today mostly to solar retailers, of course.
Mm.
One of the most wonderful things about this is, there's some great science and there's some great algorithms, and our performance management system and how we predict what the solar system should and shouldn't do is all incredibly, incredibly powerful stuff. But their eyes are glazing over already just listening to me say those words, right? But if you say to a customer, now that I've talked you through the solar system, is it okay if I include some software that's going to help make sure that you're on the best energy plan as part of the deal? Who says no to that? Everyone knows they should be switching, but everyone also knows it's the most boring thing in the world that you could actually do is to do all those calculations. And so it's a really, really simple feature to sell. And then the rest of the suite of what we have sitting behind this to help make sure that if there's a problem, we'll let you know, to allow you to detect small changes in performance rather than just, a red light, green light scenario. Having a dashboard that is genuinely nice to actually own and operate and work with, which a lot of them aren't because it's not the focus of what they do. You put all of that together and you get a really rich solution. But Plan Optimizer is just a lovely little leading thing to explain something in consumer language that they'll really get their head around.
Hey, just something that came to mind. I remember some time ago talking to a data analyst about energy, and they said, they can tell a lot from just looking at your load line, not just how many kilowatt hours you use and what time of the day you use it, but actually disaggregate that data and start to look at what appliances are running. Now, when you add solar to the mix, and you've got this opportunity to use your solar and not let it spill out to the grid at 3 cents. Is it possible to kind of say, well, you should have been putting your washing machine on at midday? We can see the washing machine's running at, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Is that something you could do?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's one of the things that we already do through some of our notification services. So, for example, if you have a circuit tagged as air conditioner, I've actually got one here. It's just a CT around the circuit that is the main one that we use for heating and cooling in this home. And so it measures how much energy we use for heating and cooling every day and tags it and pulls it aside and looks at whether there's any excess. And we do a calculation and send a notification to customers that says, hey, we noticed that you used 10 kilowatt hours today heating and cooling your home outside the solar day, and yet you exported 15 kilowatt hours today at a very, very low export rate. You would have been better shifting your heating and cooling load rather than exporting that energy. Why don't you consider pre-cooling or preheating your home? So we're already into that side of things, and air conditioning has been the first one that was the most obvious low-hanging fruit. So that's just a part of the story. And I won't scroll back through mine here, but you can see my hot water system triggering off peak there. And I was actually looking at this 2 days ago, and I've got a catch power on my home. I've got a bunch of stuff going on here, of course, but it had been so cold and wet and miserable here that we were running out of hot water. And so I went and turned the catch power on to boost a week and a half ago. Completely forgot about it, of course, as you do. And I was talking someone through the dashboard the other day, and actually, if I go back, you'll be able to see it, because I was talking someone through the dashboard, and I went, oh my gosh, I've forgotten to turn the catch off. There it is, right? So you can see the catch is coming on and off and on and off, and the boosters, the off-peak's not doing anything now because I'm buying energy in the middle of the day, which is a dumb thing to do unless you really need the hot water, which I did. But I was just happened to be looking at it, went, oh, of course, I should be back on off-peak now. I don't need to worry about it. So I got way too much. My system's a horrible noisy system, and I got diverters and batteries and all sorts of other things, but I can turn all this kind of stuff off, so that you can just so that you can get a picture of what's going on. That's my solar and my battery. I got a little end phase battery stashed away under the house. I got horrible shading. I got all sorts of things going on, but that gives you an idea of exactly the kind of intelligence level that you can get when you monitor the hell out of everything.
Wow, that's impressive. I've just recently installed the Catch Solar Relay. I don't know if you're familiar with their product.
Very familiar. Cool little product.
It is. It's really, I'm just blown away what it can do, this tiny little thing. Everything from time-based, voltage, frequency. You can set all these parameters when it's going to switch on and switch off. So I'm off-grid, and I use frequency to manage my microgrid. So I use it in the frequency mode. So when the frequency goes over 50.2 hertz, we know we've got surplus power. Let's just switch stuff on.
Yeah.
It's simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, Catch is a great example, and you know we came to the same. We had a very common question we get is when Solarlytics can do load control, export control, and when you look at products like the Catch Relay, when you look at what Sungrow can do with its inverters, when you look at what Fronius are doing with their, you know, all the different products that you can hang off a Fronius inverter, you know, it doesn't make sense really for us to try and copy what other people are already doing with great hardware developments. What does make sense is for us to use our software abilities to leverage that for people. And so that's our mission.
So you mentioned integration with Sungrow and Fronius. What level of integration is that? Is it hardware integration?
It's API integration. So effectively what you do is you install a completely standard Sungrow or Fronius system, connect it up, and then the final stage of commissioning is basically a couple of check boxes to make an API connection from iSolar Cloud, for example, to Solarlytics. And then the data flows across from the iSolar Cloud to Solarlytics portal. You then once it's installed, you then go to your Solarlytics dashboard and complete the commissioning in the Solarlytics dashboard, and then the customer simply logs on, and their experience from day one is a Solarlytics experience, even though it's pulling the data out of either Fronius or Sungrow.
I get it. So you don't need the Solarlytics little box with an antenna on the front. It's using the inverter itself, hence the very low entry cost.
Correct. And in a lot of cases, that hardware is there for other reasons. If it needs to be export controlled, for example, you're going to have to put the Fronius meter in or the Sungrow meter in. If you're in, if you're using some of the smart add-on devices that you can to those inverters, then you're going to have that hardware for those purposes anyway. So, you know, if that's what works for you, go for your life. That's fine. We can work with that.
That's cool. Wow.
It's really
so
cool.
Impressive. Yeah.
It's really cool. And we've got a whole bunch more. We've got another one that we're probably going to announce before the end of the year, if not two. So more inverters coming online all the time.
Right. So, yeah, you're looking more at the API integration with collaboration with other companies.
Yeah, look, I mean, interestingly, we've actually been pulling data from all sorts of devices for years. We've been doing this kind of experimenting for years and years and years and years, and it's now the time is right, because the inverter manufacturers have actually really got a lot more sophisticated with their APIs. API has become quite reliable and quite agnostic and easy to deal with. There's a lot of subtleties that have got to be right, and we've in fact had to reject a couple of inverter manufacturers already, not because they didn't have a good API, but because the protocols weren't right and didn't make a seamless user experience. It made it impossible to log on, for example, and make the connection in a way that just made sense for people, or because they weren't able to give us inverter control, which we can do with Sungrow. So in the case of South Australia, we're the relevant agent, so we can actually not only monitor that inverter, not only layer plan optimizer and performance management and everything else over the top of it, but we can actually remote control that inverter if the AER instructs us to either turn it down or turn it off.
Right.
Yeah.
Two-way. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that is absolutely the future of where inverters are going, is that enhanced level of remote control and sophistication, and whether it's at a centralized level from the AER or other centralized bodies to help maintain grid stability, or whether it's because a user or an installer wants to, for example, be able to dial it up and actually change some settings on it because the network said you could. So that remote interface stuff and building a nice dashboard to do it is part of what we're trying to do.
Cool. Hey, I keep seeing this lettering on your shirt. What do you got there, Nige? What's going on there? Now, there was a Dorothy Dix, if ever there was one. I think everyone who probably saw the promo realised that we're going to have to slip on to talking about electric bikes at some point.
Yeah, look, I'll keep it very brief, but of course, it's a passion of mine. Motorcycling is something I've done since forever, and I've been riding electric motorcycles now for 9 years. So I was lucky enough to ride my first one almost 20 years ago. That was one that a buddy of mine made, and I went, oh my gosh, I love motorbikes, but if I could get this guilt-free and cheap and simpler, because electric is simpler, wouldn't that be a dream? Took me a while to get there, but I've had two, and as you might have seen from the promo and read about, I was very lucky to get a Harley Davidson Livewire for a long-term test. That was supposed to be 2 weeks. That happened just before lockdown, so I couldn't take the bike back due to lockdown, which was tragic. So I actually got stuck with it for more than 2.5 months. Now, I couldn't go huge distances, but I do live in a very large LGA. I've got national parks nearby and a bunch of other good places to ride. So trust me, I think I put the more Ks on any live wire than anybody. And ultimately, when I handed it back to them, I handed it back with a letter that said, I'm so impressed. I really want to talk to you about doing a deal on this bike. And actually, I paid on Friday, and so I now own one. It was it's one of the best electric motorcycles you can own in the world. They are, I can't think of the superlatives to make it, to express how amazing it is and what an incredible piece of technology it is, let alone how exciting it is to ride. So yeah, I'm a very proud first Harley Davidson. I never thought I'd own a Harley, right? Never thought I'd own a Harley. And in fact, I've already started writing the story that says, if Harley Davidson's mission was to convert non-Harley owners to owning Harleys, we'll tick that box. You just got one.
Hey, let me just bring up a picture. I've got one on the webpage here. Let's see if this works. There we go.
There she is.
That's it?
That's the one. I've even got that color, the tangerine orange.
That's so cool.
It is. I mean, it's a good looking bike. There's no one. That was one of the things, of course, that everyone just said it's a beautiful bike, but it's the tech that's hidden below it. The software and the operating system on it is next level. It is bedazzled with fabulous suspension and running gear. It is a glorious bike to ride, and of course does 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in about 3 seconds. So plenty fast enough for an aging old guy.
Hey, there's a comment here from Josh. He's a regular on the show here. Considering how backwards Harleys are after building bikes all these years, how on earth did they make a decent electric bike? Did they farm out the R&D or OEM it?
What a great question. So I think the short answer is A, they spent many years in R&D. B, they actually had a world tour when they first built one of the early prototypes. They had a world tour where they reached out to Harley owners through the Harley Owners Group, HOG Group, globally, and said, we're bringing a container load of 20 bikes down. We want you to come and ride this bike and tell us if you like it or not. And so they got feedback from owners all around the world. They then spent several years incorporating all that feedback to make a bike that was great. So they did a lot of it in-house. No doubt they've reached out and used a lot of experts around the world, and they've done some kind of unique things. I won't bore you with the details, but they've done some of their own stuff. And what they've done is built a package. And it's easy to jam an electric battery and a motor into a chassis. It's very hard to make an operating system and a user experience and a really nice all-round package that is as glorious as something like this. I'm very lucky.
I guess the performance must be something pretty awesome too.
It's really hard to explain how exciting it is to ride. I'm focusing on the fact that it's a good investment.
Yep.
That's my
it's good
theory.
for the environment. These are all the things you tell your partner.
That's right. I was ready for an upgrade. My Zero is beautiful. My Zero's just been rebuilt from the ground up, ironically. So it's running the best it's ever been, for sale now, if anyone wants a really, really good Zero. But I was ready for an upgrade, and I really do. I mean, for me, electric motorcycles for me are akin to solar, where I always want to be playing with the latest tech. I want to be on the edge of what's going on and understand. So I'm quite happy to take the pain and be an early adopter. I don't mind leaping in a little bit early and paying a bit of a premium to try and pave the way a little bit for others. And really, I'll spend a lot of time, no doubt. Me, I'll be giving some feedback if I'm unhappy. But that's what I really, really enjoy. And of course, EVs are just going to become part of everyone's lives. But it's frighteningly fast. It is by a long shot. It has more oomph and just linear whoosh, off you go. It's so much fun. So much fun.
I often say that electric vehicles are an unfair advantage because an electric motor is the perfect motor for acceleration. It's just maximum torque at 0 revs. It doesn't matter whether you're a golf buggy or a Tesla. Model S, you can just about accelerate anything over, up to 100k or so. So it's just got insane acceleration as a norm. So no longer is it kind of like something you beat your chest about how fast you can go or how fast you can accelerate. They all do it, even your little golf buggies when you unlock them, because you've got they're crippled, so you don't chew up the golf course. But the other thing I was thinking about too was the experience of riding a bike. I used to ride bikes back in the day, a long time, and I remember I bought my first race bike. It was a Honda 754, had clip-ons, high pegs,
choice.
Little race seat. Somehow it was road legal in New Zealand. I don't know how they did that. It had a tuned 4-into-1. It had no baffles. My mum used to say, I like your bike, Glenn, because I can hear you coming home 5 minutes before you arrive. As soon as you backed off on the throttle, it was boom, 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 and flames out the back, Yeah. So there was a lot of adrenaline with just the physicality of the bike. But what about with electric bikes? How does that move you?
It's a really great question. It's actually one of the most common questions. The first one is, don't you miss the sound? And the second one is, surely it's a bit sort of synthetic, right? And the short answer is, what we have learned as humans, as motorcyclists, anyone who's ridden a bike, what you learn is that you associate that visceral experience of noise and vibration and heat as this exciting feeling of forward momentum or G's going around a corner or whatever it may be, right? So we've emotionally connected these visceral senses to it. So it takes a bit to let go of those and realize that if you're still getting your arms pulled out of your sockets, if you're still feeling G's round corners, if you're still doing 0 to 100 in 3 seconds, and you are devoid of noise, devoid of heat, devoid of vibration, devoid of all of those other things, you've actually got the best bits without the worst bits. There's no upside to noise. There's no upside to heat. There's no upside to vibration. They're all down to, I had someone argue with me once about gear shifting. Don't you miss gear shifting? I said, what the fuck would you miss gear shifting for? All that's doing is diminishing your opportunity to accelerate at a rate of knots and taking mental and physical energy. In fact, I saw a great post the other day from the Harley owners group that someone had done the heartbeat thing on a watch and realized that your heart rate is lower riding an electric motorcycle because you're doing less. You're not doing clutching and gearing and thinking about noise and heat and vibration and RPM and all those things. All those things are gone. And instead, what you're doing is you're looking at the road and you're thinking about how fast you can twist the throttle to get from A to B. So it's all the best bits and none of the bad bits. I still have an emotional connection to the sound of a roaring V-twin, and I've got a vintage bike in my shed still. That's my old passion project. But
your Moto Guzzi?
No, I've got an old Suzuki dirt bike, a 40-year-old Suzuki dirt bike that kept me sane during lockdown. That was my resto project. So yeah, I've got a lot of respect and passion for old bikes as well. But but you actually, it doesn't take long for you to realize that all the thrilling bits, all the great sensations are there in spades with an electric motorcycle.
So other question would many people ask, when you've got an electric vehicle's range, like how far can you go?
Yep.
What's the case with the live wire?
Yeah, so it's like everything. It's a bit of like how long's a piece of string. But in the case of the live wire, from new, and of course it changes over the life of the bike. You will see the battery, the range and the capacity of the battery go down over time. But from new, 250 according to the book, 250 max, which would be the city range, and about 150 on the highway. Which is kind of okay on paper. You kind of look at that and go, yeah, that's okay. But of course, I've had this experience. If I go out on a cold day, on a really, really cold day, the battery capacity is going to be a little bit lower. If it's really, really windy and I'm riding at high speed and I've got lots of turbulence, I'm going to suck power a lot faster than you would normally suck it. And so my range is quite possibly not going to be 150 kilometers. It's going to be less than that. The wonderful upgrade that I get by moving to the live wire, which is one of the main reasons I want to do it, because I want to go back to touring again. I haven't been able to do it for a while, is the DC fast charging. So this runs a 300 nominal volts battery architecture, 350 volts architecture that allows me to fast charge it at an increasing number of fast charging. So I can now, so if I stop every hour and a half, have a break, grab a cup of coffee, have a sandwich, rest my backside, whack 10 or 15 kilowatt hours in, and I'm off again. So there's a really interesting balancing point between adding battery capacity to a motorcycle, which adds weight. And there is another bike out there that you can buy today that's 22 kilowatt hours of battery capacity. A very, very nice machine. But of course, that all adds weight, which impacts the handling. And at the end of the day, it adds about another 40 Ks of range. If you can fast charge and you've got enough chargers around, okay, you've got to stop for 15 minutes, but that's fine. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I had a comment from Bryce Patton, who's an EV enthusiast. He said, you really only need a range greater than your bladder because you've got to stop sometime.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And then I've had people come at me going, but, what about the people who don't have an off-street parking and anywhere they can charge at home? And I say, have you got a service station at home as well? I mean, we're used to going places to fill up our car. Once you've got a decent charging network, fast chargers that are accessible, and the fact that you could charge your bike in 15, 20 minutes, it really is just a coffee break.
That's right. That's right. It's really not much of an inconvenience. It's certainly an adjustment, especially if you're used to a bike. If you're the kind of guy or girl who, wants to go and do 1,000K road trips, 1,000 Ks a day, it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be harder on electric bike. There's no doubt about it. You're going to spend more time stopping and recharging than you would just, dumping more fuel into the tank. There's no doubt about that. And we're not quite there for that really long distance stuff yet. But I'm 50. I'm nearly 55. I don't get to go there very often. 99% of my riding is either commuting or weekend riding. And I can easily go and do a few hundred Ks. I can do a few hundred Ks. We did a 300 or 400K road trip on my Zero with a bunch of mates. You can do it. The Harley with fast charging capability makes it a whole lot easier.
Hey, we've got some questions I missed out on, so I better run these past. It looks like you're due for a tattoo.
Who's that? Oh, Mitch. No, look, it's quite a leap for me to go to Harleys, I have to say, but I'm not getting a Harley tattoo yet. Let's have some fun first.
And we got one here from my partner. She's probably sitting behind me. I can't see her at the moment, but she's got an electric car. So she was asking me the other day about, wouldn't a more efficient electric car be better because it could go farther? And I was arguing, actually, it's really mostly about the battery and the weight of the vehicle. The efficiency is so good with electric motors, it doesn't make a big difference which motor you have.
Yeah, I think as a general rule, that's absolutely true. But certainly on motorcycles, they have been making quite a lot of leaps and gains by, an extra couple of percent here, an extra couple of percent there, and getting more performance out of the controllers. So, for example, the Livewire has a liquid-cooled controller and a liquid-cooled battery, and it has a small transmission system. The battery is still air-cooled. Interestingly, because you get to a certain point with the complexity of technology that it's just not worth the extra weight and hassle and everything else. But what they've done is they've increased the efficiency of energy flow between those. So even though this bike is substantially heavier than my Zero was 180 kilos, the Harley's almost 250. So it's quite a substantial bike, but the watt hours per kilometer is almost the same. Right, and that is all about efficiency of the system, the technology that they've got, the efficiency that they're getting out of the controller and motors now is definitely improving, and it's certainly, watching the Moto E series and what they're getting out of the Moto E bikes is profound, and again, it's the balancing act between power and the gee whiz factor of how far you can go below 3 seconds to 100 versus range, and of course longevity of the battery and the other components that are in there. And some of the lessons that many owners have found is, okay, I might be able to charge this faster, but I'm going to overheat the battery. If I discharge it, I'm going to heat it up, and then if I try and recharge it really fast, I'm going to heat it up too, and you hit thermal limits all the time. So we're a long way from the peak.
Hey, I've got a question with charging. What type of connector does it have?
CCS2.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's got a combination of the dual. If you Google it up, you'll find a picture of the charge port on the top of the faux tank. So it'll take a standard a standard CCS2 plug. Comes with its own charge plug that you can just plug into a power point at home, and then it's got the dual prong DC charger port that just flips open so that you can hit it with the fast charger there as well.
Cool. I was actually trying to Google that then, but I think people can look that up for themselves. Yeah. So you've got the ability to charge at home. I call it trickle charge, just off a 10 amp socket outlet. And you can go to a fast charge place and use DC charging at really high rates, just while you're having a cup of coffee.
Correct. Yeah, which is, and having owned a couple of electric bikes for the last 9 years, 99% of my charging is going to be home charging. I'm going to go out, have a day's ride, come home, plug it in, it'll do its thing. And that's the way most EVs are owned and charged. But, if I'm at home and it happens to be 40% because I've just come back from a ride and a buddy says to me, hey, do you want to go for a ride? I'm limited at the moment because I can only slow charge at home, but 1.5 Ks up the road, a fast charger's just opened up. So now I can say, give me 15 minutes and I pop up the road, grab a quick fast charge up the road and I'm ready to go again. So, it's the flexibility that fast charge brings that's really, really handy.
What about the cost of running an electric bike?
Oh, wow. Putting aside catastrophic problems, which can happen with any bike, of course, no matter whether it's petrol or electric. I did a calculation. My previous bike before I got my last Zero, the 2014 DS, in 3 years of ownership, in comparison to my Motor Guzzi, I had saved, $3,500 in 3 years. So it's basically $1,000 a year of savings. That's a combination of registration, maintenance, and electricity cost instead of fuel cost. So they are like a solar system, right? You're paying up front and then your savings come over time, and it's getting faster and faster and faster, those savings advantages. So they're really cheap to run.
Yeah, and if you've got, solar and you can charge during the day, it's virtually zero cost to run.
Well, that's right, and my boss is wonderful. We've got a charging port at work, so I can charge if I'm going to the office for free. There are lots of customers who I know who've got the ability to top it up for me, so I can often charge for free. Lots of car parks have free charging, and indeed the fast charging station up the road, I can get the first 7 kilowatt hours for free, which for me is half a battery, and the remaining 7 kilowatt hours is going to cost me about 50 cents or something. So yeah, it's you can actually, especially this, one of the advantages of being an early adopter is to incentivize EV ownership. What they're doing is offering free charging in so many places. So yeah, you can actually get away without paying anything to charge it for a huge amount of time. And of course, I've got some solar here as well, so I can solar charge it.
It's interesting to see the etiquette of charging at someone else's place. I was actually a guest at someone's place for dinner, and a friend of his turned up for dinner, and he turned up at the front door with a bottle of wine and an extension cord. It was just lovely. Like, do you mind if I plug in while I'm here?
Oh yeah, I've rocked up to restaurants and got, would it be okay if I just put this power lead through the window into the kitchen while I have dinner? And they just go, what, mate? What? Oh, it's just a charger. It's just for my electric motorbike. They go, oh, sure, mate, no worries. So yeah, we've done that. And when we did our road trip, there's a great little some video online and stuff of a road trip we did a few years ago with a bunch of electric motorcycle owners, which we videoed. And yeah, a lot of us were all equipped with fast chargers. I've got a fast charger, an 8 kilowatt charger for my Zero, so that we could do it. But we set ourselves up with 3-phase so that we could pull much larger amounts of power and split the energy across multiple chargers, each one on a single phase, to get the bikes charged faster. And I think there was 6 or 8 of us. And we'd managed to line up to get access to showgrounds, which are set up with a lot of 3-phase infrastructure these days for grey nomads, of course. So they said, yeah, come through. You want to charge some electric bikes? Sure, come through. That's fine. So we'd rock up and we'd all plug in our 8, 10 kilowatt chargers, and we were sitting there charging at like 90 kilowatts. We had every 3-phase board taken up, and we'd just go whoosh and suck 90 kilowatts for 45 minutes or an hour, and then have our cup of coffee and leave them $5 and go. Yeah, it certainly, I mean, it's interesting watching the rate of charging infrastructure going up so dramatically now. I mean, 350, 400 kilowatt chargers are going to become standard.
I've just had a thought bubble here. Maybe you should approach Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman and suggest you do, instead of the long way up, the long way round, Australia on electric bikes.
Yeah, well, I've watched all their series. Actually, I'm a big fan and watched their trips on the Harleys. They took live wires up from South America, which was it was a great real world test, frankly. And yeah, look, I did agree with Harley that in exchange for a little bit of love when I bought the bike, that I was going to try and set a record for the longest distance ridden on a live wire so far. So now I actually tried to do this legit. I said, you can probably see the logs of all the bikes that are out there, right? So why don't you pull the logs and tell me what the longest trip that's been done on one is? Now, whether they can or will do that, I don't know. And of course, there aren't very many of them on the road in Australia yet. They only launched here late last year. But certainly, I've got a mission and got the approval from the boss for a week off work to do at least a couple of thousand Ks and do a nice big road trip. As soon as I can get out of Sydney,
just 5 kilometres round your house.
Well, I've done that. Trust me, I know every street in the LGA. And I know the national park very, very well. But no, what I've already done actually is got all the charging apps and everything else, and mapped out all the routes that I can do to make access to those fast chargers and try and do the longest trip that I possibly can. So I aim to set an inaugural record for a long distance ride as soon as I possibly can.
I got another question here from Darlene. She's asking, what do you think the future of motorbike and car racing will look like?
That's a really good question too, actually. Only yesterday I watched a documentary about Michael Schumacher, and it was really interesting watching the evolution of the tech and the vehicles and everything else, and sitting there listening to the latest generation of Formula One cars. They don't sound like a roaring V12 like they used to anymore. They are almost turbine-like in the sound that you hear from them. And if you watch Moto E or the Formula E classes, they're not that dissimilar now. Now, there's not the pops and bangs and, some of the other visceral things that we're used to, but the performance level is now so close. And the tech that is spilling out of that into street machines already is quite profound. So I think we're only a couple of years. In fact, I used to track them. Isle of Man has been running an electric motorcycle series for years. I used to track the gap to try and predict when electrics would break the average lap speed records, and it's very, very close already. They're not quite there yet, and of course they can't do the number of laps that a petrol bike can do on that circuit yet, but it's only a matter of time. So I think within 5 years, within 5 years max, I would say that in most competitive racing spheres, it will be pretty hard to beat an electric vehicle. I think they'll become preeminent and dominant. It's already the case on Pikes Peak, which is one of the toughest race circuits in the world. It's already the case in off-road now. Electrics are really starting to dominate in trials riding, for example, with motorcycles. It's already starting to dominate. We're seeing Dakar cars now coming out with EV. So anything short duration, electric can already compete really, really well. And so, I think 5 years, I think it'll be preeminent.
It might come down to the rules too. I mean, when McLaren brought out the vacuum sort of feature on the cars that was suck them on the road so they could just go around corners like they're on rails, they banned them because they were just too fast.
That's right. And in fact, there's an EV already. There was a great little thing that I saw at Goodwood Speed Festival recently, and there's a new EV that's basically a track day toy car, or not a toy, but a track day EV that you can buy, and it's all carbon fiber. It's staggering, mind-blowing statistics. 0 to 100 in 2 seconds, all that kind of amazing bling. If you got $1 million or two to blow on one, and it's got 2 massive fans underneath the back of the chassis to create downforce to allow you to get the speeds out of this thing without upsetting the aerodynamics. So it's the fans are coming back.
All right. Only fans. Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I just looked at the time. My God, we've done the longest Toolbox Tech Talk ever. You just set a new Toolbox Tech Talk record.
I could have warned you.
Yeah, I thought the bike thing would take us a long way. But look, I've really enjoyed talking about everything from your history to Solarlytics to electric bikes, and just feeling that enthusiasm again for a bike.
Oh, good on you, mate. Well, it's like I say, 30 years. You got to stay. You got to stay excited. You got to stay passionate to keep plugging away. And for me, I've been lucky to keep finding amazing things to do with software, amazing things to do with electric bikes, and of course, solar never stops. And mate, thanks for having me on, because it's always a pleasure to actually speak to other people who are as excited about it as I am.
Cool. All right. Well, I think this is a wrap. I'll just do the outro, and thanks once again. All right. See you, Nige.
See you, mate.
Yep. So that's it. And just to remind everyone, I'll put some beats on while I'm doing this. I will be running that battery standards course coming up on the 29th and 30th. So if you're interested in that, there's the details. It's really aimed to the industry, people who are installing or designing battery systems, want to come up to speed with the new battery standard, NZS 5139. So it's 2 4-hour sessions in the middle of the day, Australian Eastern Time. Those who are interested in following me, I provide a lot of free content on my YouTube channel, so lots of technical stuff, product reviews, product reveals, even unboxing. Everyone does an unboxing these days. Talk about the specifications of products. Occasionally you'll see me on Twitter. I actually stream this to Twitter, so some of you might be watching it on Twitter. And of course, just the odd fun pic on Insta. So that's it for this week. I'll see you next Sunday with another special guest. So I'm doing that feature on people of the industry, and it will be someone you probably all know. Okay,